The Blueprint for Tyranny: How a Plan to Reform Government Could Signal a Coordinated Coup. Throughout history, authoritarian takeovers have rarely happened overnight. Instead, they often emerge under the guise of necessary reforms, promising to restore national pride, secure borders, and return power to the people. But what happens when these promises are nothing more than a smokescreen for consolidating executive power and dismantling democratic institutions? A book outlining a detailed strategy to overhaul the government, framed as a patriotic mission to protect American values, could be an ominous warning sign of an internal conspiracy. If the true beneficiaries of such a plan were the president, a select group of loyalists, wealthy elites, and foreign allies, this would indicate a deliberate effort to undermine democracy from within. This article will explore how modern governments consolidate power, the warning signs of an unfolding conspiracy, and the steps that can be taken to detect and prevent an attempted coup before it reaches the point of no return. The Authoritarian Playbook: How Power is Consolidated. Would-be dictators do not seize power with outright declarations of tyranny. Instead, they manipulate public sentiment, exploit crises, and gradually erode democratic checks and balances. Here's how it typically happens. 1. Exploiting popular rhetoric to gain support. A successful authoritarian takeover requires public approval, or at least apathy. Leaders frame their power grabs as essential for national stability, using moralistic and patriotic rhetoric to justify undemocratic policies. 1. Restoring the family and protecting children. This could be used to justify censorship, government control over education, and restrictions on personal freedoms under the pretense of protecting societal values. 2. Dismantling the administrative state. A claim to return power to the people may instead be a strategy to remove oversight agencies, eliminate accountability, and consolidate executive power. 3. Defending national sovereignty. A push for national security could lead to increased military control, crackdowns on dissent, and the purging of political opposition. 4. Securing individual rights. Could be twisted to selectively remove legal protections for certain groups while strengthening the president's authority. Historical example: Adolf Hitler's rise to power was fueled by promises to restore Germany's national pride, eliminate corruption, and protect traditional values. These slogans helped him consolidate power before dismantling democracy entirely. 2. Undermining democratic institutions. Once a leader has gained public support, they begin dismantling the systems designed to limit their power. This includes: 1. Weakening the judiciary by appointing loyalists and discrediting independent judges. 2. Defunding or dissolving regulatory agencies that provide oversight, DOJ, FBI, ethics offices. 3. Blocking legislative opposition by pressuring or replacing lawmakers who challenge executive overreach. Historical example: Vladimir Putin systematically weakened Russia's independent judiciary, took control of the media, and eliminated political opponents to maintain a firm grip on power. 3. Co-opting the legislative branch. A president seeking unchecked authority must neutralize Congress as a threat. This can be done by: 1. Stacking the legislature with loyalists who refuse to investigate or challenge the administration. 2. Passing laws that expand executive power while suppressing opposition parties. 3. Using legal loopholes or manufactured crises to bypass congressional oversight. Historical example: Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán rewrote election laws and restricted opposition parties while using nationalist rhetoric to justify his power grab. 4. Controlling law enforcement and the military. With judicial and legislative obstacles removed, the next step is ensuring that the police, military, and intelligence agencies serve the regime, not the Constitution. This includes: 1. Replacing top military officials and law enforcement leaders with loyalists. 2. Expanding surveillance and police powers under the guise of national security. 3. Using federal agencies to investigate, harass, or imprison political opponents. Historical example: After a failed coup attempt, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan purged thousands of military officials and judges, using the event as an excuse to consolidate power. 5. Silencing political opposition and the free press. A free press and a vocal opposition are the biggest threats to an authoritarian leader. To neutralize them: 1. Journalists who criticize the administration are banned, arrested, or harassed. 2. News outlets that challenge the government are shut down or forced to promote state propaganda. 3. Social media is regulated to censor opposition while amplifying government messaging. Historical example: In China, the Communist Party under Xi Jinping expanded censorship and cracked down on dissent while framing it as protecting social harmony. 6. Using crises to justify power grabs. When public resistance grows, Authoritarian leaders manufacture or exploit crises to justify sweeping emergency powers. This can include 1. Declaring a national emergency to suspend constitutional protections. 2. Justifying mass arrests of opposition figures as security measures. 3. Delaying elections under the pretense of stability. Historical example. After 9/11, several governments expanded surveillance powers, some of which remained long after the immediate crisis ended. A corrupt leader could use a similar strategy to indefinitely extend their rule. Warning signs of an authoritarian conspiracy. A government conspiracy to consolidate power rarely announces itself outright. Instead, watch for these key warning signs. Erosion of checks and balances. The executive branch expands its power at the expense of Congress and the judiciary. Elimination of political opponents. Critics face arrests, lawsuits, censorship, or smear campaigns. State control of information. Independent journalism is attacked, replaced with propaganda. Normalization of unconstitutional actions. The government frames illegal actions as necessary for national security or moral reforms. Corrupt legal system. Courts are filled with loyalists who approve the president's actions without question. Targeting enemies of the state. Political opponents, activists, and journalists are labeled as traitors or foreign agents. Foreign influence. The administration forms closer ties with autocratic regimes and accepts external support in exchange for policies that serve foreign interests. How to detect and prevent a coup before it's too late. If a government is showing signs of internal conspiracy, action must be taken before it becomes irreversible. Here's what can be done. 1. Early whistleblowing and media exposure. 1. Journalists, intelligence analysts, and government watchdogs must report early signs of abuse. 2. Whistleblowers can leak evidence to independent news outlets and oversight committees. 3. Example. The Pentagon Papers exposed government deception during the Vietnam War, helping prevent further abuses of power. 2. Congressional and judicial resistance. 1. Congress must investigate and challenge executive overreach. 2. Courts must rule quickly against unconstitutional orders, and law enforcement must enforce these rulings. 3. Example. In the Watergate scandal, Congress and the Supreme Court forced President Nixon to hand over evidence, leading to his resignation. 3. Mass public resistance and protests. 1. Large-scale protests and civic movements can pressure the government to back down. 2. Civil disobedience and national strikes can disrupt the conspirators' ability to govern. 3. Example. Mass protests in Poland and East Germany helped bring down communist regimes. 4. State and local government defiance. 1. If the federal government becomes corrupt, state leaders can refuse to enforce unconstitutional orders. 2. State attorneys general can sue to block illegal federal actions. 3. Example. Several U.S. states resisted Trump administration policies they viewed as unconstitutional. 5. Military and law enforcement refusal of illegal orders. 1. Military leaders must be prepared to reject unlawful orders that violate the Constitution. 2. Example. During Nixon's final days in office, military officials were quietly advised not to follow questionable orders. Final thoughts. A detailed book outlining a strategy for executive overreach, especially one disguised as moral or patriotic reform, would be a major red flag for a potential conspiracy to consolidate power. The best defense against authoritarianism is vigilance, a free press, public activism, strong institutions, and legal accountability. But if the government is actively suppressing these defenses, then the fight for democracy becomes even more urgent. The question then becomes, will the people recognize the warning signs and act in time, or will they wake up too late to a government that no longer belongs to them?